Everybody, if you could please come on in and find a seat. And everybody, people coming in, please feel free to scoot up to the front, scoot forward. There's plenty of room on each side of this pillow up here as well too. Jai Jaganambe Mata Ki.
What a beautiful joy to be together this evening. We just celebrated a very special divine sacred union. Rebecca and Jarrett came together. And so in honor of them choosing to have their sacred union here at Bhakti Yoga Shala, and in honor of love and union and bhakti in general, I thought let's talk for a few minutes about love, about union, about bhakti. And then, as always, we'll open it up for questions. Because ultimately that for me is always the goal, is to give the time and give the space for whatever questions you may have, whatever's up in your mind and your heart, keeping you from living as your highest, deepest, truest being of love, being of truth, being of consciousness. So as we celebrated this beautiful marriage, and I was thinking about a beautiful quotation by Mahatma Gandhi that said, "Where there is love, there is life." You think about coming together, first in a marriage and then in our lives of devotion, but we'll begin about the marriage for a moment. Because when two become one, as we've just spent the last couple of hours engaged in ceremony and ritual around, there comes this challenge where there was space for one, now we're trying to squeeze two. And whether it's a bed, whether it's a closet, whether it's a house, I mean, literally, we are taking that which was occupied by one and now making it occupied by two. And then we go a step deeper and we talk about lifestyles and decisions, and where there were always decisions that were just occupied by one. What I want, when I want it, how I want it. Well, when there's one, there's just one occupying those decisions. Now suddenly there's two. And so suddenly there's this challenge, negotiation, conflict, opportunity, depending on how you look at it. But in all these cases, what we're looking at is two coming together as one and trying to fit. And the only way to make it fit is literally and metaphorically to move over it, right? I mean, if you've got one person in the bed and now there's two people in the bed, well, the only way to make that work is you move over it. You've got one person's clothes in the closet, now there's going to be two people's clothes in the closet. How do you make it fit? You move the clothes over it. But then when we get into decisions and life and challenges, it's not so much about a physical moving over, but it's still a moving over, it's still a making space, but now it's making space within myself. Now it's about how can I, my attachments, my expectations, my vision of how things should be, from the smallest, tiniest, seemingly insignificant of are we gonna, eat Chinese food or Italian food or Indian food, to the more significant challenges that we face in life. They hold us back when I refuse to get out of the way. When I'm so full, body, mind, energy, heart, of who I am, how I think, how it's supposed to be, but there's absolutely no room for the space of another. And this is where we talk about the ego. The ego is occupying all the space. And in the Indian spiritual tradition, we bow a lot. We bow down. And one of the reasons that we bow not just in front of the divine, not just in front of our guru, but we bow down in front of those we meet. Namaste literally means the divine in me bows to the divine in you. So now, quickly in passing, you say, oh, namaste, 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 namaste. But really it's namaste. I bow to you. And the meaning of that is all about humility. It's all about getting myself out of the way. There's a beautiful line in Hindi, and I look around and I think maybe one or two people will understand, but nonetheless, it's worth giving it in Hindi first, just because it rhymes very well, and then I'll give you the English, which in Hindi says, "Jukta to wo hai, jisme jaan hoti hai, akar to murde ka pehchan hoti hai." And what it means is, the way that you know someone is alive is if they can bend. A corpse is that which doesn't bend. The ability to bend the self, to bend the ego, to create the space is the sign of being alive. And I began with Gandhiji's quote about where there is love, there is life. And where there is life, there is bending. We, in slang, not such nice slang, but it's worth mentioning, refer to dead bodies as the stiff, right? When they talk about stiffness as the term for the body. Once the soul has departed, dead, the corpse. So when we want to be alive, and especially if we want to be in love, we have to bend and create space. And this is true regardless of whether it's a marriage of two people. I begin there because we just had their beautiful wedding. But this is true in our relationship to God. This is true in our spiritual lives. That which keeps us stuck, that which keeps us suffering, is our inability to love, is our attachment to how it has to be, how I want it, when I want it, what I want. And that inability to bow, to bend, to create space, to get the ego out of the way, is what's keeping us stuck. We have physical heart attacks when our blood vessels literally are full of plaque that keeps the blood from flowing. But we also have spiritual heart attacks. And we have spiritual heart attacks when that channel of who we are gets clogged. And it gets clogged full of our ego, full of our attachments, full of our expectations, full of the games that our mind plays. And then we find ourselves in this state of misery, depression, suffering, loneliness. Our hearts hurt. And what we don't realize is, well, of course my heart hurts. I have clogged up the channel of who I am. And grace can't flow. The blood may be flowing fine to my physical heart, but the grace flowing into me spiritually is not happening. And so, whether you're embarking on an actual marriage, or embarking on a spiritual path, or looking for the next step on our spiritual path, it's all about how much can I get out of the way so that grace can flow. We are our own impediments. It's about how we think. There's a beautiful teaching that says, Man eva manushyanam karinam bandha mokshaya. And what it means is the mind is the key. The mind is the reason for all. The mind can keep you stuck, or the mind can set you free. And it's up to you. And so when we are moving forward on our spiritual path, regardless of with whom we are in love, because even in an actual marriage, ultimately, it's all about love for the divine. I just spent a lot of time emphasizing to them that the love of each other is a love of God, is using the marriage as a way to get closer to God. And so whether it's in your marriage, in your meditation, in your spiritual practice, in your life, how can you let go of that which is keeping you from being this vessel, this channel of grace to flow. When we get busy, over busy, when we get too focused on the stuff in the world outside, and it's important to do. We're all here, we have to fulfill our duties, we have to fulfill our dharmas. We're absolutely supposed to work, to do, to engage in action. And we are supposed to remember in the midst of that action that love of God, and it bears repeating innumerable times, it does not matter what your religion is, it does not matter what your spiritual path is, it doesn't matter how you connect with the divine. By any name or no name, any form or no form, it doesn't matter. But the teaching that is given to us so clearly and so beautifully in the Bhagavad Gita is in one line. Remember me, love me, and fight the war. There it is. What am I supposed to do? Do your duty and remember God. And when we think about loving God as a nameless, formless, or with name, with form, or in the form of our loved ones, because of course, for so many of us, that connection to God feels different. And that's okay. Don't worry about that. What's important is love anyone or anything. As long as what you're loving is spirit, soul, essence in them, you're loving God. So if you find that for either personal, emotional, psychological, history reasons, or just due to trying and it's not happening, that loving God feels very difficult for you, a lot of us grow up with different baggage around the concept of God, the concept of religion. To go back there feels very difficult. A lot of us try and it just doesn't happen. We may sing, we may chant, we may do yoga, we may offer flowers, and we still can't experience that love of God. Don't worry. There's no one right way to love God. The divine pervades everyone and everything. And so whatever, whoever you can love, be it a spouse, be it a best friend, be it a parent, a child, a grandparent, the tree in your backyard, the river that runs before your home. If in that you can connect with content rather than form, essence, spirit, what you're loving is God. Because that essence, that spirit that flows through all of us is divinity. And so just love. And when you love, and this brings us back to the concept of here we are in Bhakti Yoga Shala getting married. So we're talking on the one hand about love and devotion to God. Bhakti means devotion to God, love for God. And getting married to each other. Where does that fit? Well, it fits perfectly because when you love God, you can go at it either way. When you love God, you can love the world. When Jesus Christ says, love thy neighbor, I've thought about this a lot, So many different people have so many different religious paths that come through, so many different traditions. And so when you think about sort of core teachings of different religions, you think, okay, so Jesus Christ says, love thy neighbor. Well, does he mean only your next door neighbor? I mean, really, seriously, like what counts? Next door, down the block, half a mile radius, same zip code. Who is the neighbor, right? And he's not specific, which leads me to believe that there's a greater neighborhood about which he speaks. And of course, how can you possibly love all your neighbors? You don't even know all your neighbors. I mean, seriously, raise your hand. If you actually even know everyone on your block, forget your whole neighbor. Raise your hand if you know the name of everyone on your block. Okay, so if we don't even know their names, how can we possibly begin to even think about actually loving them? And that's a really hard ask. And yet it's given to us as canon, as scripture. Clearly as something we are supposed to imbibe, embody, and follow. So how do we do it? Well, to me it seems like the only way you can do it is to love God. Because if you love God, then you realize that all of your neighbors, the ones next door, the ones down the block, the ones in your zip code, the ones in your city, your state, your country, the world. I mean, in Hinduism, we say Vasudev Kutumbakam, the world is a family. So, okay, now we've gone from my block to the world. How can I possibly love everyone? I can't know everyone. The only way to do this is to love God and to realize that all of your neighbors, all of our sisters and brothers all over the world of every species are pervaded by that same divinity. So you can go into this love either by I love God and therefore I am able to love others, because in others I realize that same God I love is in me. That's one way in. The other way in is I love you. In you I see God. Therefore I love God. Doesn't matter which way you go. Whatever's easier for you. But get in. That's the injunction. Love. Love God. Love your neighbor. Love the world. And here's what's really beautiful to me about this, is love really is, I mean, it's been given to us in not only our religious scriptures, it's been given to us in dozens of our favorite pop songs, is love really is what we need. It's what the world needs. Because love is that which breaks borders and boundaries. And whether you look at personal depression, addiction, conflict in our families, conflict in our societies, conflict in our nation, conflict between nations, terrorism, war, environmental destruction, and everything in between. It's all rooted in this myth of separation. It's all rooted in I am separate from you. When I feel separate from the world, from God, from the universe, I feel depressed. As that grows, contagiously. There's conflict with each other. It grows and grows and grows, and it becomes the conflict that we're living in today. When I feel separate from Mother Earth, I'm able to pollute her, cut her, destroy her, use her, abuse her, discard her, because we're separate. And so if we can get back to this core of love, and love with devotion, it's all that's asked of us. There's a beautiful teaching again in the Gita in which Krishna says, Bhadram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyupratam ashnami prayatatmana. What it means is, whatever the devotee offers to me, be it a leaf, flower, fruit, or water, whatever is offered to me with love and devotion, I accept it. I relish it with love and delight. And I mention that here because we spend our lives feeling like so much is asked of us. In our home, in our workplaces, and then even in our religious worlds. Feels like God isn't happy with you unless you X, Y, Z. You are bad and wrong and a sinner unless you this. And what I love about the teaching is, what is asked of us is to offer whatever we have. Lord Krishna doesn't say, the leaf and the flower and the fruit and the water is great, but if you have a Mercedes, I prefer it. Or, I'm going to bless the guy who gives me the water in the gold cup a little bit more. So should you have one, that's the way to offer it. It's all about the love and the devotion. And this is true for God, and it's true in our relationships. Think about any relationship that you have of love. It could be a spouse, a romantic partner, it could be a parent, it could be a child, but a relationship of love. And now I'm going to give you two options of gifts from that person, from the beloved. Option one is they make you a homemade card, but they're not much of an artist. And so, yeah, it's there, but you can't really tell exactly what's been drawn, and something's been drawn, but it's not quite obvious what it is. It's not so nice, and there's a little bit of glitter over here, and there's a little bit of blue that's kind of dripping off the side. And the colors don't really go with the pale blue construction paper that it's been made upon. But you can tell that a lot of time has gone into the creation. So that's option one. Option two is there's a card that was made beautifully and perfectly by Hallmark, which your beloved secretary picked up for him or her during the lunch hour and brought home for him or her to come home and to offer to you in the evening. Okay? So all who would prefer the Hallmark card of love, raise your hand. Right, so all who would prefer the homemade card of love, raise your hand. So, even though I knew the answer, I asked the question because it bears not only repeating, but it bears looking around and seeing a unanimous show of hands. Because we move through the world feeling like what I do isn't enough. Who I am isn't enough. What I have to offer isn't enough. And if every single person in the room raised their hand, which means chances are, even if your loved one isn't in the room, he or she would have raised their hands as well. God certainly is in agreement because it's been given to us in the scriptures. So we now have all that's being asked of us from God and all that's being asked of us from our loved ones is love me. Love me with your time. Love me with your energy. Love me with your heart. And that's the way to move through our lives. And we do our duty. So it's not love instead of our duty, our dharma. It's love through our duty and our dharma. It's love pervading our duty and our dharma. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that our duty and our dharma, and by the way, they're not always the same. It's important maybe for a moment to stop and clarify. Don't worry about the semantics. A lot of times we get really hung up on semantics. But when we speak about purpose, we speak about dharma, we speak about our duty. Our duty is that which I need to do. So I need to put food on the table. Okay? That's a duty if you are the breadwinner of a family. That is a duty if there are mouths that are unable to fend for themselves depending upon you. If you are an employee, your duty is to do what your boss tells you to do as long as you want to be in the job. You don't want to do it, feel free to leave the job. But those are the duties. Dharma gets deeper. And I'll give you an example to help understand. Because a lot of times when we think about dharma, we think about our purpose. And there's this sense that somehow it has to be very, very big. It has to be very, very big, very romantic, very grand, always enjoyable. I'm always going to get appreciated for it, loved for it. Everybody's going to recognize me. Right? We laugh because this is really tragically a common myth. When I find my dharma, when I find my purpose, it will be big, it will be extraordinary, it will be romantic. I will be acknowledged and appreciated for it. And that's not usually the case. And going back again to the Bhagawati, well, Arjun's dharma was to be a warrior who was bringing back dharma, righteousness, goodness, to adharma, lack of goodness, lack of integrity. His role, his purpose was to bring back the light to the darkness, to bring back a rule of light, of goodness for the people. Fighting a war is not very fun or romantic. He begins the Bhagavad Gita by saying, not going to do it. Don't want to do it, forget it, let them keep the land. But Lord Krishna explains to him, you must do it, this is your dharma. Take a man or a woman who spends their day hammering big stones into small stones on the side of a highway in India. Because that's still how they make roads in India. So if you drive through the roads, in many places you'll see people hammering big rocks into medium-sized rocks, and medium-sized rocks into little rocks. And it's what makes the gravel that goes in the road. Well, clearly, to be a rock hammerer, is not fun, not romantic, not enjoyable. Nobody's appreciating it. Not a purpose of life, the rock hammerer. But he's doing it to put food on the table for his family so that, in this example, for example, his daughters don't have to beg on the side of the road and actually can go to school. Because he's decided he doesn't want his kids to be beggars. He doesn't want his daughters to be sold into the sex trade. So he's going to work double hours, double time, doing whatever he needs to do. Get his wife doing it by his side so that his daughters can go to school. And then his daughters become the very first girls in their slum or in their village to go to school. Well, so now being the father of the first girls to go to school, that starts to feel a little more like a dharma purpose. But we don't always see it. And chances are, if you asked him, what's your purpose? They don't talk to me, I gotta keep hammering these rocks. He's not moving through the world with some grand concept of my purpose on earth is to start a revolution of women empowerment. He's just doing what he knows he needs to do. So we live our lives, our married lives, our lives with whomever we live, our lives with God, doing our duty, and loving the divine. And that's all that's called upon us. And so when we remember that, it makes life much, much more simple. Not easier. Simple doesn't always mean easy, not easier. Because as I said, it's not always fun, it's not always romantic, you don't always get appreciated. But it makes it much more simple. The question then to the self always becomes, is this in line with my duty, with my dharma? And is this of love? Is there love in this? And if not, then stop and rethink it. I'm going to end here so that we have time to take questions. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between spirit and soul?
Okay. So the difference between spirit and soul, on a personal level, I really try to avoid getting caught up in semantics. Meaning, the reason being, very few of us are going to become Sanskrit professors. Very few of us are going to write books or give courses in the distinction between different Sanskrit terms. And I use the word Sanskrit because a lot of the confusion actually comes simply in translation, which is one of the reasons I try not to get too hung up on it, because what you're looking at is simply different words being used for the same term. So Sanskrit gives us one term, English gives us a whole bunch of them. What's the difference? Well, certain people attach different meanings, and that's absolutely fine. Here, for me, is one way of thinking. And you can use either term for either way. So I'm not going to give you a difference between them, but I'm going to give you different ways of thinking about both of them. The core of who I am is spirit/soul. I have a body. My body has changed innumerable times since I've been born. My core sense of I, me, hasn't changed. Anybody who studies developmental psychology knows from the time we're just a couple of years old, we're saying I, me, mine. That pretty much goes on until our deathbed. But the body changes forms innumerable times, every cell in it. What is that which is consistent? Here's another slightly more, or much more, gruesome way of thinking about it, but it brings the point home. God forbid, you contract a horrible illness, you need an arm amputated. The arm gets amputated, you're still there. The other arm gets amputated, you're still there. The legs get amputated, you're still there, right? I mean, we're depressed, it's not fun to become a quadriplegic, but there's no sense at which I suddenly no longer feel I. That there's no longer a connection to soul spirit. It's not like, oh wait, you took off my right leg. My connection to soul went with it. Soul, spirit, still there. You could literally sliver us, and I know this is gruesome, I apologize, but you could literally sliver us from the torso, sort of sliver by sliver by sliver. And eventually we would die, but there'd be no point before we died at which point we said, that was the sliver in which my soul spirit left. So there's no place in us it actually exists. And yet, when you close your eyes and go deep and meditate, it's there. When you love, it's there. Your body isn't loving. What is it that loves? My hands, my arms, my legs, my neurotransmitters, the electrical signals in my brain. What's loving? What am I connecting with? And I'm not talking the emotion of love, which we know absolutely has chemical and electrical components and substrates, but that deep, what we would call a soul connection. So what's connecting? Soul. So that's one way of thinking, soul, spirit. Another way of thinking is that which connects us. So when I look at you, if I don't look at you, I'm over here, there's this empty space, and you're there. We're two separate beings. I'm an object, you're an object. But when I look at you, and we connect, and you feel that connection, then we're no longer separate. There is something flowing between us. And that's spirit/soul. There's no place I end and you begin. Where does one wave in the ocean end and the other wave begin? It's all ocean. Thich Nhat Hanh said very beautifully, enlightenment is when the wave realizes it's ocean. So, spirit, soul is the ocean. The wave is this temporary form at this intersection of time and space that I've taken. But interestingly, even in the wave, if you took an eyedropper full or a spoonful of wave and you looked at it under a microscope, what would you see? Ocean. If you took it to a lab and you said, all right, tell me what this is, scientists would say ocean. So even as it is a wave, It's ocean. So that's soul/spirit. But it's also, it's not just the core of who I am and that which runs between us. It's divinity. That is my true nature, which is divine. The ocean in that metaphor is God, is divinity. So yes, it has taken the form of a wave. I have taken the form of a 48-year-old white American sannyasi woman. But ultimately, I'm soul, spirit, consciousness, divinity. God, love, truth. Call it whatever you want to call it. Slash our way to infinity, right? Love, slash truth, slash soul, slash spirit. The other reason, lastly, that I try not to worry too much about semantics is anyone who's ever found themselves meditating and having that beautiful moment where the capital I, it happens. And then there's a part of your brain that says, oh, I wonder if this is it. Oh, this is soul, or oh, this is my kundalini, or oh, this must be God, or oh. And then suddenly you're out. Like it's over. The minute the brain kicks in trying to name, analyze, label what you're experiencing, you're no longer experiencing it. And so it's much more important to experience it than to figure out which box you're going to put it in. Yes.
Thank you so much. It's so beautiful to have you here. And I would like to ask you your thoughts about how, as a community, we can be more engaged in service or seva. There's so many needs. All we have to do is walk less than a block and we see the needs around us here, but also in the larger world, environmental issues and so on. Because I know the work that you're engaged in is very crucial to the survival of our planet. So what ideas do you have for us as a community to get more engaged?
Fantastic. Wonderful. So, first of all, it's important to realize that in the same way that our individual duty, dharma, is different, in the same way our engagement will be different. And so this is another area where it's also really easy to feel like I'm not doing enough, because on an objective level, none of us is doing enough. I mean, we might as well just admit that. None of us is doing enough, because if we all were doing enough, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. So we agree to accept that fact, but also not to berate ourselves over it, and not to feel like because this one's doing it like that, that's how I'm also supposed to do it. In the body, every part of the body is actively engaged, but they're engaged in different ways. The ears do one thing, the nose does something else, the mouth does something else, the stomach does something else. If every part of my body tried to digest my food, it would get pretty messy. So we get it, that yeah, my eyes see and my ears hear, and the digestion is kind of left to my stomach and intestines, and everything is going to do its own part. So, number one important part is be engaged. I don't care how unskilled you may be, how absolutely absent your disposable income may be. It doesn't matter. There's always something you can do. We speak in India a lot about giving with tan man dhan. Tan means of the body. Like, I'm going to go and lay bricks in an orphanage. I'm going to go pick up trash. I'm going to go door to door and get people to register to vote. Doesn't take any money. Doesn't take super brains. Just takes the willingness to use your physical body in service of that which is needed. So that's ton, money, brains, the mind. All right, I'm not so much the door-to-door type, but I'm going to be the one who's going to plan who's going to bring the tortillas, who's going to bring the beans, who's going to bring the rice, who's going to bring the lettuce, so we can make burritos that the people who are using their bodies are going to go out and use to feed the homeless people. I'm going to be the one planning the tree plantation drive. I'm going to figure out what types of trees, what time of year to plant them, where the right area to plant them is, whatever it may be. Or it may simply be I'm going to work, and remember, we don't all have to reinvent the wheel. This does not mean go out and open an NGO. There's already, if that's what you're called to do, by all means do it, but there's lots of organizations that are already doing lots of good work that need your bodies, that need your minds. And then done is our donation, money. So other people may say, not the door-to-door type, not the going out and giving burritos type, also not really, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy or the interest really in planning it, but I'll tell you what, I believe in what you're doing. I'm gonna pay for all the burritos. I'm gonna pay for all the trees. Or I'm simply gonna make a donation to your organization and let you decide what to do with it. But we need all of those. We need bodies, we need minds, we need resources. So get engaged, whatever you have, use it. I read, where's my book? I read Rebecca and Jared, and it's worth repeating. A prayer, the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, that says, Lord, and I've amended it for the wedding. It's usually I, but we've turned it into us. Lord, make us instruments of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, union. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is dying, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. So whatever you can do, whatever you can bring, wherever you can heal. But the first line is, make us an instrument, a tool. It means be useful, be beneficial in whatever way you can. And you've said it so beautifully, the world needs a lot. And it may be with an organization, it may be individually. Puja Swamiji tells a wonderful story of a very old saint who used to be planting mango trees in an orchard where Swamiji would walk when he was young on the banks of Ganga. And one day he stopped and he asked this old saint, you must be really old. You look really old. And mango trees take, a good 10 years to give any kind of fruit. You're not probably going to be around when these mango trees give fruit. So why are you out here every day planting mango trees? And the saint said, because someone planted the ones that gave the mangoes that I eat. And so I'm planting the ones to give the mangoes that someone else will eat. And it's essential these days. And it doesn't matter what is sacred to you, whether it's people, whether it's rivers, whether it's mountains, whether it's animals, whether it's your children, the children of the world, whatever it is that is sacred to you in any way, they need you. Serve them. But don't serve as it has to be something that you put a sticky note up that says, do a random act of kindness every day, or the third Saturday morning is my volunteer time. Serve as self to self. This body serves itself. I itch somewhere, I scratch. I hurt somewhere, the rest of the body compensates for it. It's all self. No one's having to beg any part of the body to please, step up to the plate and help out a little. It serves as self. Serve the world as self. Understand that we are not separate from Mother Earth. We're not separate from nature. In our worship ceremonies, in our pujas, we offer the 5 elements. We offer fire. We offer earth by flowers. We offer water. We offer air, wind, and space, ether, through incense and through waving. Why do we offer the elements? It's to remind us, oh God, you've created these 5 elements. It's what we are made of. We are made of the elements. All of creation is made of the elements. We are offering the creation back to the Creator, which of course makes absolutely no sense if you take it literally, because if God created us, then why does God need us to offer flowers or water? I mean, seriously. God needs our rice. God needs our flowers. God needs our ghee. Why? Well, it's to remind us. These things I'm offering, these flowers, this earth, this water, that's what I need. Just different molecular bonds. We're all made up of the same stuff. Whatever species you are, whatever color you are, whatever race or religion or sexual orientation you are, we're all the same stuff. So when you serve like you serve yourself. And then it becomes not only beneficial to them, but it becomes beneficial to you as well as spiritual practice. And the last piece about this is, it's very important that we all realize that the highest, deepest calling of a spiritual path, a yogic path, is to be engaged. And you can look back in history, look at the Buddha, sort of beautiful epitome of enlightenment, of peace. Well, the Buddha, after gaining enlightenment, went back to serve. We are called upon. It's not my enlightenment and then I'm done, my peace, then I'm done, my bliss, then I'm done. It's my enlightenment, my peace, my bliss, my truth, so that I can be a clear vessel for the work, the flow, the energy to flow so I can serve. The same way that the flowers give, the same way the rivers give, the way the sun gives. Nothing in nature is stagnant and selfish. Look around, whether it's fruit, whether it's fragrance, whether it's shade, whether it's oxygen, whether it's water. Everything in nature is giving something. So get engaged, get involved, and share that and spread that. This is not the time to sit this one out. We are called upon that which is going on, particularly in our country, but also, of course, in the world. We are absolutely called upon to be voices of, agents of, instruments of peace, love, oneness, inclusion, mercy, compassion, openness, giving, caring, all of these virtues. We're being called upon to be instruments of that, now more so than ever. Yes. Last question. Yes. We'll take yours as the last.
I wanted to speak about the role of grace in the process of being awakened to being able to see the source of our suffering. So like we see that this habit or this belief I have is leading me to these actions and behave in this way, and that's the source of my suffering. And like, of course, it's important for us to work, cultivate, and plant seeds that will keep us from participating in like habits that lead to our suffering. And like, of course, the work is needed, but like, after a certain point, like at least in my experience, like I can feel that thing that needs to be there. And like,
Okay. So, what's the role of grace? This is what she's asked. What's the role of grace in helping us grow, heal, become, step up to who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to do, right? We keep doing, but then where's that grace? So grace is always there. Grace is the aspect that is ever present. But what happens is we're not always open to it. Because grace does not necessarily come in the way that we think it should. It doesn't always, it's like saying, okay, so the sun is always there. But at the moment, the sun is shining on the other part of the earth. If right now I decided that my experience of the sun needed to be for there to be sun rays right now on me, well, that wouldn't happen because it's not in line with the laws of nature. What would be needed at that time would be for me to say, oh, this must be the time I'm supposed to go to sleep. This is where the sun has gone to the other side of the earth because we are supposed to sleep in the dark and rise in the light. And so the sun is giving them light while I'm supposed to sleep. So rather than beating my head against the wall about why is the sun not shining on me when I need her, the presence of grace would be for me to realize, oh wait, what's the message for me here? Night after night I'm crying for the sun. Night after night it's dark. Oh wait, that's the universe saying, get some sleep, sweetheart. And so when we want grace to be there, we have to open ourselves to grace coming not as we dictate. The example that I always give about this is, if you walk up to a vending machine and you put in your dollar bill and you push the button for a chocolate bar, assuming the vending machine is operating, it'll give you a chocolate bar. The vending machine doesn't care that you're 400 pounds and diabetic and your teeth are falling out. Paid for chocolate, you push the button for chocolate, you'll get chocolate. But in life, we put in the dollar bill, we push the button for chocolate bar, and we get a bag of celery instead, or a bottle of water instead. We're like, oh, this machine is broken. And we kick it and we yell, and then we decide, forget it, I need, a new machine. A new guru, a new mantra, a new spiritual path. I'll change my religion, I'll do whatever I need to do, but for God's sakes, give me that chocolate bar. Without realizing, hey, wait, maybe actually this bag of celery is really what I'm not going to taste nearly as good, not what my desires are clamoring for. And this is much more superficial, I know, than most of us are operating from, but it helps to take light examples. We're clamoring for something that we think would just be so good. And we've done everything we think we need to do to get it. I've put in the dollar, I've pushed the button. And this is the universe saying, sweetheart, I love those teeth in your mouth. I don't want them to rot out. Eat the celery. I love this body. I want it to be around for a long time, and at 400 pounds, it's not going to last very long. Eat the celery. And so it's the universe giving us a message. But here's the last important piece of this. It is not a reward or punishment. It is not about you are good and therefore you get the chocolate, you are bad, you get the celery. You are good, grace shines on you through success and health and wealth and beauty and acclaim and all the things that we think are the fruits of good karma. And you're bad, so you get failure or illness or death or a loss or the things that we think are bad karma. No. You are getting exactly what you need right now to take your next step closer to God, closer to the truth of who you are, closer to your path. So instead of praying for grace to change something out there, pray for grace to allow you in this to see what you're supposed to learn, to see how you're supposed to grow. And if it's an internal issue that you're struggling with, because this happens also with internal issues. I've got an anger issue. I've got an addiction problem. I have this, and I'm praying for grace. Know that that grace is there. And know that when, despite the presence of grace, you threw a temper tantrum, hit someone, drank, used, engaged in whatever the behavior is, know that in that moment, the ego, the mind, the pattern, the identity, the fear, squeezed out the presence of grace. It's that spiritual heart attack. It's, I'm so full of the identity, the fear, the ego, the way of thinking, that they're actually, even though grace is there, there's no place for grace to flow. And this is where we need to let go. Let go of that part which is keeping us stuck. And stay on track. Stay clear, stay grounded, stay anchored. Keep praying. It'll happen. Absolutely. And know that addiction is a spiritual quest, just in the wrong direction. The quest is right, but we're looking in the wrong place. So it's a quest to get out of the suffocation of this particular moment, this intersection of time, space, to get out of this breath, to get out of how my mind is, to get out of that. And that's a spiritual quest. That feeling of, I can't take it in here right now. I need to drink, use, eat, whatever it may be. That's a spiritual quest. We are not supposed to be stuck and suffocated in that intersection of time and space. And this is where the practice, the spiritual practice, along with the psychological work that we do, helps us touch that place within us that is expansive, that is infinite, that isn't stuck, that isn't in this time, space, mental framework I want out, but that is already expanded, that is already free, that is already out of the games of my mind. So know that the quest is a beautiful one, but you're looking for milk in the shoe store. So now the only question becomes finding the cow, so you can get what you need. Wonderful. It's been such a beautiful joy to be together tonight, and such deep gratitude to Govindas and Radha for creating a space of such love, of such openness, of such devotion, that just infuses and infuses and infuses all of us and the whole community with such love and such gratitude. Thank you so much to both of you. Have a beautiful evening. Hope to see you all very soon on the banks of Ganga.
Let's give it up for